the Export Credit Insurance Corporation, your export risk partner. I'm speaking now to Tsidiso Disenyana, who is the senior economist at the ECIC. Tsidiso, thank you so much for your time. Perhaps a good place to start off is looking at some of the key global trends that, from the ECI's perspective, are worth keeping an eye on.
I would say broadly two issues here, both on the political side and also on the economics side. On the economic side, of which is the business that we do as the ECIC, we see some growth trends declining, especially in key developing countries such as your India, Russia, and also in China. But now that growth has been propelled or rebalanced by what we've seen as a pickup in the United States and also in the European economies. And on the political side, I think this is a very well known point, the election of Donald Trump in the US, and how does that impact on South Africa and by extension the continent at large. We've also seen some political risk issues, especially in the Middle East and North Africa, in particular in Aleppo, in Syria, which has really impacted the region over there. I think that going forward will impact on how Africa deals with the outside world.
Let's look at the political factors. You've mentioned Donald Trump's election. There is the Brexit issue. How is that likely to impact South Africa? Okay,
let's pick up on the easiest one. The Brexit issue, I would say it was more of a market fragility issue at the time, very short-term impact. I think we've also seen the impact of that in South Africa in terms of hot money going out of the country. But in terms of direct FDI, which is sitting in the economy, it will always be there. But if you look at issues such as trade, whereby the the United Kingdom has got a trade agreement with Kenya, South Africa, and also Nigeria, there's a notion that those trade agreements might be looked at from a Brexit point of view. But for now, we don't know where the direction is going to go. And on the Donald Trump issue, and we've heard this from his rhetoric on the election campaign, where he was very unhappy with aid being granted by the U.S. to specific countries, and also the trade agreements that the U.S. has signed with some of the major economies. Now, in particular for Africa, the impact will be through AGOA. But now, if you look at the figures, AGOA, especially oil and gas trade, is about 2% of total U.S. global trade. That's very negligible. So will Donald Trump look into that? I don't think so. And also on the aid side, yes, this aid is unilaterally granted by the U.S. to specific countries around the world, and even here in the continent. Specifically in the continent, that constitutes about 0.2% of the U.S. budget. Should Trump really take that allocated budget or aid for African economies, again, it's a very negligible number. It's not really going to save the U.S. any money going forward.
Intra-Africa trade, from your perspective, give us a sense of how in terms of transactions, activity between the various economies. Give us a sense of how that's faring.
Again, it's very negligible when you compare that with other similar regional economies around the world, especially in Asia and even in the Western Hemisphere, Mercosur and NAFTA in North America. I would say it ranges around 12–15%, depending on the source of information that we get. And some of, I would say, outstanding regional economies which has been talked about is East African Community, whereby, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, they've been really trading well amongst themselves, and they've really deepened that agreement into services and other sectors which are not part and parcel of the agreement before. But again, be that as it may, we've also heard news that it's been increasing somewhat, but again, it's a very subjective matter, because in each and every regional economy, there's one economy that is dominant. In East Africa is Kenya, within SADC it is South Africa, in West Africa is Nigeria. So there is that economic polarization whereby one country dominates that intra-regional trade, of which we want that to be diversified, and all the other countries within specific regions do participate in that regard. And again, one of the key issues has been the manufacturing capabilities of many African economies. Most of the economies don't have those productive capabilities to manufacture value-added products. Hence, they tend to import those from the rest of the world and not importing that from other African economies. Maybe, yes, they might be importing some of the commodities from South Africa. I believe from a South African point of view, that constitutes about 70% of our exports into the rest of the world, and they constitute manufactured commodities. But that's where I believe, from an ECIC point of view, the future of South African export destination market is at.
There have been some criticisms about regarding some of these regional trade bodies. Do you share some of those criticisms, in particular the fact that sometimes they're not effective in driving intra-Africa trade?
You deal with multiple, I would say, issues, both at the regional level, country-specific level, and this rules and regulations of which countries have got to reach consensus on. Do you reach a consensus based on rules and regulations applied by South Africa, and you take that on board as another country? So those are the issues that we need to look into. Yes, most of the people are saying Africa should really push for intra-regional trade, but that is really going at a snail pace, simply because most governments don't involve business when they enter into these agreements, and even business is not aware of the existence of these trade agreements and what do they mean for business in terms of accessing markets out there. So government needs to talk to those trade agreements and be able to inform business accordingly. Again, the other issue is more about implementation, especially with regard to behind the border issues, customs. That's where most of the problems really lie, whereby exporters do export commodities at a very high cost simply because of customs issues, and take a very long time to reach their destination. Again, custom-related issues, and the associated cost to export those commodities.
You're a government body. Are you engaging with government and business effectively enough?
Oh yeah, as the ECIC, we've been pretty much proactive, where we've seen or assessed any challenges being experienced by business people, exporters and investors in undertaking any business transaction. We tend to engage the government accordingly. And with the ECIC, we have stakeholders from the National Treasury, from the South African Reserve Bank, Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and even the Department of Trade and Industry. Wherever we pick up any challenges on the ground as we undertake our missions as the ECIC, we tend to inform these government stakeholders accordingly. These are the challenges that our businesses, exporters and investors, are facing in the continent, and this is how you can help them out as a government.
Please leave. Thank you so much. That is Tsidiso Disenyana, who is a senior economist at the ECIC. The Export Credit Insurance Corporation, your export risk partner.